So what is up YouTube? In today's video and over the next few videos, we're going to be talking about one of the bigger frauds in recent history, which is Nikola Motors. But this is a company that could be changing things around now, but we will be talking about that in the next video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the start of Nikola Motors and how the company actually went public. Now, Nikola was founded in 2016 by Trevor Milton and is named after the famous scientist Nikola Tesla, just like the company Tesla is. And another reason for this name is to always get comparisons with Tesla. So before we actually look at the history of Nikola, let's first look at the history of Trevor Milton, because a lot of the fraud allegations behind Nikola is because of the founder Trevor Milton. So before Trevor Milton started Nikola, he had many other ventures, and one of them is a e-commerce company called Upillar. So essentially, Trevor Milton sold this idea to many investors, and he said that Upillar will be only second to eBay, and a lot of investors trusted him and they invested in this company. But soon after, Upillar did go to zero. Soon after, Trevor Milton did start a company called Hybrid, and this was a company that wanted to reduce fuel costs by modifying trucks and making them run on diesel and natural gas. So this company got a $2 million upfront payment from a company called Swift, and this was for research and development and to install the technology on the first batch of trucks. However, in a 2012 lawsuit, Swift claimed that Hybrid spent some upfront money on unrelated spending, including personal use by unnamed officers or directors, and then there's this whole huge counter lawsuit, and nothing really happened, and both companies decided to end the litigation. Now, a few years later, Trevor Milton was able to sell this company for a few $1,000,000, which he did use to fund Nikola. But from these two different businesses he owned, I can understand that Trevor Milton does have a history of overselling his business and overpromising investors. So now that we talked about Trevor Milton's past before Nikola, let's actually talk about the start of Nikola. So Nikola Corporation was started in 2014, Salt Lake City, Utah, and essentially they wanted to make zero-emission trucks. So this included semi-trucks that were run on hydrogen and electricity. So Tesla semi-trucks are run on our battery electric vehicles, and Nikola also wanted to offer one type of vehicle like this, but they also wanted to offer hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and this is what they wanted to do differently. They wanted to bring in hydrogen infrastructure into the automobile industry. So until 2016, Nikola didn't really show audiences much. They kind of just kept working on different concepts on how their truck should look and how it should be built. But in 2016, they had this huge event where Nikola actually showed off its first truck, which is the Nikola 1, and it's an electric semi-truck. Now, this was a pretty big event, like I said previously, and I do believe it took place in Utah, and there were many media companies there and a lot of other corporations, including the governor of Utah. And during this whole time, Trevor Milton was talking about the truck, how good it is, and how much better it is from diesel or other existing trucks. And the whole press conference, or the whole reveal, he was saying it was a functional truck. However, it came out later that this was not a functional truck at the time, and the Nikola management team was essentially screwing back in loose pieces. So again, Trevor Milton did lie to the audience about how functional the truck is, and essentially he was just trying to sell the idea to more investors. So from this, we can see that Trevor Milton does hype up his ideas and his products a lot, and now we'll be looking at what happened to Nikola after this. So like I said before, this truck was unveiled in 2016, and Trevor Milton and his team basically said that they designed their whole truck themselves, and so they got 6 design patents for the truck. And then in 2017, Tesla unveiled this Tesla semi-truck, and there were a lot of design similarities between the Tesla Semi and the Nikola 1. So Nikola decided to sue Tesla for $2 billion for copying their designs, even though Nikola had a patent. Now, this was an extremely long-going court case, and actually lasted till now. And essentially what happened is Nikola looked like they were gonna win, but then Tesla came out saying Nikola actually bought their designs from another company in another country, and this completely threw off the narrative for Nikola, because they never stated this in their court case. Instead, they claimed they made the design. So essentially, Nikola did lie, and I think the case is still ongoing, and nothing really happened with this. Also in 2018, they showed us Nikola 1 in action. However, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the truck actually moving, which we will be talking about a little later. So now let's talk about Nikola actually going public and a few of the other vehicles they wanted to release. And so 2 years after Nikola actually showed the Nikola 1 in action, they went public on the stock market. So essentially, they merged with a SPAC called Vecto IQ. A SPAC is a special purpose acquisition corporation, and essentially a blank check company that needs to choose another company to take public. And so Vecto IQ chose Nikola Corporation, and after both companies essentially went into the merger, Nikola went public. So in March of 2020, Nikola and Vecto IQ came into the agreement where both of these companies would merge, and Nikola would be listed on the NASDAQ. And essentially, their valuation valuation was $3.3 billion, but this was if Nikola's share price was $10. Now right after this agreement, there's actually an investor presentation which talked about Nikola's plans and their future revenue projections. So in this, they talked about the timeline. 2015 was when they were founded, and essentially they said in 2019 they unveiled fully operational Nikola 2 Alpha trucks. However, this is false, and this was proven by a Hindenburg report, which basically said both the prototypes they showed were not fully functional. And then they also said that they have 14,000 in reservations for their fuel cell electric vehicle and a lot more for their electric vehicle. Now essentially what you have to understand is reservations actually cost zero. So essentially it was free to reserve, and it would never actually amount to actual revenue. So in this presentation, before Nikola actually went public, they basically said they spent a tons of money researching and developing the Nikola 1 and 2, and they're going to take this technology and put it into a pickup truck, and they'll make a pickup truck called the Nikola Badger, which is both a fuel cell electric vehicle and battery electric vehicle. So after investors saw this, they were extremely excited, and a lot of people started buying the Vector IQ stock, because if they bought Vector IQ, then they would eventually own Nikola. And essentially the management also said they would open up reservation for the Nikola Badger soon, and it did open once the merger actually happened. So the merger happened in June, and the Badger reservations also happened in June. Like I said before, they also talked about revenue and profit projections. So essentially the management said they're expecting to do $150 million in revenue in 2021, then $300 in 2022, $1.4 billion in revenue in 2023, and $3.2 billion in 2024. So this investor presentation came in March, and Vector IQ and Nikola actually merged together in June. So essentially the ticker symbol went from VTIQ to NKLA, and the stock price shot up in a huge way before and after the merger. So in the initial parts of the merger, VTIQ stock was trading at $10, and that implied a market cap of close to $3.3 billion for Nikola. However, after the merger, there was a lot of hype in the stock, and the stock at some point in the pre-market went to as high as like $80, and eventually started consolidating at $65 before it crashed in a huge way. This means that Nikola almost had a market cap of $30 billion. Think about that. Company with no revenue and not really any products to show for went to as high as $30 billion because the CEO was able to sell the idea that this is the next big thing. So from here the stock started to cool off. That's probably because people started taking profits, and from here Nikola actually made a deal with General Motors, but then there's this huge short seller report by Hindenburg Research that basically had a lot of allegations on Nikola, like they never had a functioning vehicle, and all their shows were just a non-functional vehicle, and the one time they showed a truck driving was just actually strolling down a hill. However, we're going to be talking about all this in my next video, but in this video you should have understood the timeline of Nikola. They started in 2014 by Trevor Milton. The first major event was them showing off the Nikola 1, where they said it was fully functional, but it really wasn't, and then they showed the Nikola 2 in 2018, and they said that was also fully functional, but it really wasn't. It was just rolling down a hill. And then the investor presentation, where the management hyped up their company and their product, talking about the great technology they did have, and also they're talking about their pre-orders, which would eventually amount to $3 billion in 3 years. So they expected to go from 0 to $3 billion in 3 years by building out fully functional hydrogen infrastructure as well. And honestly, this is laughable for a company that didn't really have any working products at the time. It really just seemed like they were trying to sell their company to investors to pump up the valuation, but then the CEO and the management can get out, which is essentially what happened, but we will be talking about that in the next video. So this is just the start of the end for Trevor Milton run Nikola. We're going to be talking about the rest in the next two videos. So if you guys did enjoy the video, please do leave a like and subscribe. Also comment down below what videos you'd like to see, and thank you for watching.